Okay, I think we're on. Now I'm a little bit sad that I didn't record your story about the tiki mask. Maybe you can just show it to everybody who's gonna
I'm
watch this
covering it
later.
up, but
Yeah, you're
yeah,
covering it.
this mask belongs to the songwriter of the Earth, Wind, and Fire song September, who had an estate sale because she passed away recently, and uh, there's a there was a lot of cool, kooky, kitschy stuff there. So I've
Were
got it
you
in
were
my
you
backyard.
were you a little bit apprehensive or afraid to put it in the house? Maybe it's haunted, so
Yes,
you put it in
it's
the backyard. Was that the reason?
yes.
Okay.
That and spiders. It was also covered in spider webs. But
Okay.
yeah, I definitely considered that. I mean, you can't if you haunt a house.
No.
In this economy, what are you gonna get a different house?
Yeah, well, you never know. It actually might go up in value. Depends who's haunting it. You know.
Beetlejuice
Um,
style. Yeah,
yeah, in this particular case, it was a person of some repute. So, could actually play well. But yeah, it's going through a cleanse. It's gonna be in the backyard for a while. It's like a halfway house, right? You're gonna make sure everything is fine. It's behaving itself. It's all good, and then maybe move it like a few inches closer. Maybe
yeah. Like give the
the garage,
spirits a chance to
the
leak
shed.
into
Yeah.
adjacent properties and
Yeah,
go to the neighbor's house.
exactly. Give them some suggestions. Just point at the neighbors
Haunt,
you don't like.
haunt the fence. It's nicer over there.
Just go that way. um, anyhow, okay. So to everybody who's going to be watching this later, hello and welcome to the very first episode of our Toon Labs podcast. Working title. We'll see if that sticks. Um, and for this first one, Kevin and I, who have been working together for the past 7 years, coming up on 7 years, I actually realized today that I was thinking about this, and I think my Outfit 7 anniversary officially is in February, but I started working for Outfit just about now, 7 years ago, like September, October, as a freelancer. I think I did some of the first gigs, pieces that I did for them, and actually with Constantine, who's also here, and he's um, eavesdropping and listening in. I think the very first few animatics I did in September, October. So I guess
As
that
I
mark.
recall, I think it was a Talking Tom 2 trailer where Tom had a piece of
Is
soap
it
and
was the it
he,
was this yeah, it was the piece of soap that gets away from him. It was also the one where he has too much food and can't fit it in the hi Susanna has too much
I'm
food and can't fit it in the fridge, so he blends everything.
yes,
And that
yeah.
was a neat one. And also, I think it was a Gold Run trailer. It was several things. The one with like the Zeppelin thingy, um, like the
Yeah,
hot air balloon or whatever. I forget now exactly what it looked like. Um, but there was
I
Gold Bar.
recall I recall the soap one in there because and maybe it'll spoiler leak into the conversation we'll have, but like I remember you made it that the soap went to space, which I think hadn't
Yeah,
been in the script. And then or if maybe if that was in the script, like you made it like knock off the Sphinx's nose, or so there was
yeah,
some
it went like
additional.
around the world, and then it went into space and like said hello to some satellite and came back and
Yeah,
burned.
and that was like, oh,
Well,
that
caught
was a
fire
cool
and
addition.
re-entry didn't really burn up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alex,
yeah.
we actually made the animatic for these episodes.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you
I know.
remember.
I mentioned it. Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Um,
cool.
so
Classic
yes.
days.
Anyway, so we've been working together for 7 years, and I thought it would be a really good idea to kind of kickstart this series between the two of us. For those who don't know, at Outfit, so for the Talking Tom brand, we make together many different short form content pieces, a lot of shorts. And over the years, we've had different types of series. A main kind of staple, long running since 2019, pretty much. A 3-minute short series. Before that, it was a shorter format. This was before my time, my tenure here. But since we've had that, and we've had other short series, we've had Hank's Adventure Guide, we had Angela in the City, and some other bits and pieces and different things here and there. So short form is really a huge part of what we do. So I thought that it would be a great idea, and short form also, for the most part, that has no dialogue. So we're doing some formats that also do have dialogue. Some things will be coming out with dialogue. Eventually, we did, for example, one of the formats that we did with dialogue was Hank's Adventure Guide. Is a good example. I think I posted one of the episodes in the screening room thread for y'all to take a look at. But the main run of shorts that continues to this day is non-dialogue, for example, and many other things. So between Kevin as a head writer, me as a creative director, kind of supervising director, over this period of time, we've done so many that we've kind of sort of not figured out, but sometimes accidentally stumbled upon certain things that we kind of know that, for short form, this is how it works, or something like that won't work. And even when we're conceiving things and kind of pitching things, already we can tell that, okay, this might not work because it's short form, number one, it won't work for this format, and secondly, it has no dialogue. So we thought it would be a good idea to kind of talk about maybe the specifics of sort of how we approach it, and I'll try and get Kevin to do most of the talking, because I really wanted this conversation to be mostly from his perspective as a writer, and I'll jump in with my additions and 2 cents from my perspective. So without further ado, Mr. Pedersen, the floor is yours.
All right. Hopefully the internet holds up. I always have little warnings on my computer like the internet's janky, but I think it's fine. Probably fine. Yeah, so I was thinking about where to start kind of talking about this, and we've been going over a little bit together, like, how do we structure this? And I don't want to kind of give like a whole history of where I'm coming from and where I was born and everything, but I do actually think maybe if I start with a little bit of talk about the comedy world that I came from, it will connect.
A little bit of that background I think is going to be useful.
So when I started doing comedy in Los Angeles, I was working mainly at this theater called the Upright Citizens Brigade, which was a improv and sketch theater. It was very big in the aughts and the teens. It's still around. But it was sort of like it was the feeder for like every comedy show that came out during that like 20-year period. Most sitcoms, like everybody in SNL, like went through that. It was sort of like Second City, and Second City is also still around. And a lot of what they did was based in this philosophy called the game. And when I started learning about comedy, people talked about the game like it was this magical thing. And even further back, there was a guy named Del Close in the 70s and 80s who wrote a book about improvisational comedy, a very sort of like academic book, and he was talking about the philosophy of it, and he mentioned the game, and he would say things like, the game is like being a car, but you can only see in your rearview mirror, and you're going over a waterfall, and it's wonderful. I think that's like almost a literal quote. And so I was like, what the hell does this mean? Like, what is this? And you would go and you would do an improv class, and you would do a scene, and you'd get a note that was basically, oh, the game, there was no game. You didn't understand what was the game. And people would have all these ideas about what the game essentially meant. And at a certain point, as I was going through this, something clicked for me where it started to make sense. And basically what the game was a simple one sentence or less description of what was funny about the scene. And basically the idea was, if you're trying to do a comedy scene where everything is funny, they all kind of cancel each other out and it just turns into garbage. And if you go watch like a student comedy show, you'll see this all the time. And you know, no disrespect, like I did so many of these. This is like an intentional part of like somebody's growth as they're learning to do comedy. But what you'll see is like a crazy cop goes to interrogate a criminal and the criminal committed this insane crime, and then the victim of the crime is a monkey and the monkey is a psychic monkey and everything is just nonsense. And I mean, look, there's always going to be an exception. I always have to be like, well, there was one time and that it actually did work. But like, as a general rule, unless you really hit lightning in a bottle, what you're gonna wind up with is a big pile of garbage, because it's just nothing makes sense. It's just one ridiculous thing after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next, until we've just hit a certain level of ridiculousness, and then we're out. So the idea with the game was to say, boil it down to one funny thing, like grandma keeps being sexually inappropriate. So okay, cool, that's the scene. And so then we have a grandma and she says inappropriate things and people go, oh grandma, don't say that. Oh okay, I won't, but let me tell you about the time you and your grandfather, you know, whatever. And she keeps doing it, and you set up that pattern. And other little funny things might happen, and there might be like a funny character that comes in here and there, and there might be like a little side joke. But if you're describing that scene to somebody, it's, oh, sexually inappropriate grandma. The grandma keeps saying sexy things, and that's the joke. And then what you have, if you can clarify that, if you can get that one sentence game, is you have a sketch that you can actually talk to people about, or a comedy piece that you can actually talk to people about. Because if you've ever tried to describe a scene where everything is crazy, it's really hard. You're like, oh, okay, it was so funny because there was like this dad and he didn't understand the slang that the kids had. But oh, but I forgot to say they were all lizards. But then, but it actually doesn't matter that they were lizards because it's also in the future. And the person's watching you describe this and they're just like, I don't understand. I don't know what. Maybe that was funny. I'll have to see it, I guess. But if you say like, oh, it's a grandma and she keeps talking about all the time she had sex with grandpa, then you can make an honest decision. You can be like, I think that's funny, or you can be like, that's not funny to me. And then that's like, you can actually discuss that and you can talk about the piece kind of on level. And so to me, that became this idea of game, and tried to bring that into all the comedy that I did when I was doing live comedy, and then and obviously bleeds into writing. Um, because again, you're getting these like simple ideas behind the scripts that you're writing, so that when you're describing it to people, you're not saying like, okay, before I tell you about this idea I have to give you a 30-minute backstory about the world building that I've set up, or whatever. You can just say, oh, it's this one simple joke, it's this thing, it's this guy, it's, oh, you know, it's that character, this character is going to do that thing. um, and that's a lot easier to talk to people about. It's also a lot easier, if we're thinking about the industry, it's a lot easier for other people to talk to people about, because realistically, if you go and pitch something, that person is going to then have to pitch it to their boss, right? And so if you can barely describe it in a sentence and you're going like, oh, okay, I got to explain all these other little side details, like good luck. That person's going to walk down the hall to try to pitch it to their boss, even if they really liked it, if they had a great conversation with you, and now they're holding the piece of paper with all these different bits of information on it, and they're going, you know, I think it was this guy, and I forgot that they were lizards. I forgot to mention that. And as they scuff the pitch, what they're going to do is they're going to save their own ass, and they're going to go like, you know what, it wasn't a really good pitch. I got a different pitch, and they'll talk to them about somebody else's idea.
Yep.
So this one simple idea, this one simple concept, became really, I think, the driving force for a lot of the comedy that I was writing, and I think a lot of the successful comedy that's really ever been written. When I was teaching classes, I would show them the Monty Python Dead Parrot sketch, just to show like Monty Python didn't take UCB classes, Monty Python didn't read the Del Close book. This was all from before. But why has this sketch endured for 60 years or however many years it's endured? What is it about this sketch? And there are funny little side jokes, and there are specific acting choices that are very good. Obviously, it's a talented group. But I think what it basically is it's this one very simple idea that the shop owner won't accept that the parrot is dead. And then the straight man character, John Cleese, just gets angry and he keeps trying to prove that the parrot is dead, and the shop owner just won't accept it. And that's really all that's happening. And it happens like 4 times, and then he leaves the shop. So that basic idea, if you've done any pitching or work in the industry, is basically a log line, right? It's basically saying what is a simple 1 sentence or less, or maybe 2 if it's a movie or something. But what's a really simple concept for what we're trying to do? How do you get all of these swirling ideas boiled down to one basic thing? How do you basically take whatever you're making and turn it into like, yeah, there's depth, yeah, there's side characters, there might be surprises and jokes and twists along the way, but ultimately it's sexy grandma, and my show is sexy grandma, and that's what it is. And if you don't want sexy grandma, you don't want my show, because that's what my show is. If you wanted to have a different catchphrase, we can talk about that. If you wanted to have a different outfit, we can talk about that. But if you don't want her to be sexy, we should just do a different idea, because that is the core game, the core logline, the core sort of soul that is driving this entire premise. So anyway, I hopefully haven't drifted too far into the stratosphere, but that's sort of like that was kind of I think the education that I had, and that was the realization. And obviously, if you're doing live comedy, it's every single person trying to disprove the rule all the time. Like, well, I'm gonna do anti-comedy then. But eventually, like, yeah, people are always gonna do weird experimental stuff, and there's always gonna be like some example of something that doesn't follow the rules. But it's like, I mean, this is a boring example, but like, it's like if you're learning piano and you know the scales and you know how things basically work. And then once you've got that, then you can go and improvise, or you can go and, twist stuff, or you can be like, whatever, wrote a pop song without a bridge or whatever, but you have to know what a bridge is before you do that.
So speaking of rules, and let's bring it back to shorts and kind of maybe talk a little bit about how you apply some of those learnings from your sketch comedy days and comedy days to premises for shorts, for example, and what like you think about, oh, sexy grandma. Okay, that makes sense. Well, not for a Talking Tom short, maybe, but
Yeah.
and also structure, right? I would just want, but before we go there, I just want to point out something, or maybe just kind of say that it also resonates with me in terms of focus, what you just explained, right? So like with those sketches where like people are trying, everything needs to be funny, everything needs to be a punchline, everything needs to be a joke, and then you just disperse the attention and disperse the focus, and like, what is this about? It's a mess, right? And I find that a lot of many of the notes that I have to give as a director, supervising director, creative director, whatever. Salute, Yamko. Pudzic.
Special guest.
Special appearance, cameo. Many of the notes that I have to give also have to do with focus, right? Focus and clarity. It's like, okay, what is this about? What is this moment about? What are we focusing on here? What is the short about? So I think that resonates like as a throughout thin red line, generally speaking, for any type of content, I think, but specifically because it's so much more condensed and concentrated, it doesn't have dialogue for short form, for this kind of specific format that we're talking about. So So let's go back or further. Let's move
Mhm.
further and talk a little bit about premises, how we brainstorm premises, again, what kind of resonates, and we go like, oh my god, that's a cool idea. If there's any like checklists in your head, or things like that when you think about these things. Structure, would be also maybe a good idea to touch on, as
Yeah,
well,
well, I
because you
think
can.
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because you can kind of do both in terms of overthinking it. If we're talking about, let's say, a 3-minute short, that it's a non-dialogue 3-minute short, of which we've done, a million. Or you can maybe not give it enough attention, and then you're going kind of on that other side of clarity, that we were just talking about. So
Yeah, I mean, I think jumping into the world of shorts, the biggest adjustment, the biggest learning was really just getting back to a reminder that that principle of like simplicity and game, and we're sort of in an environment where people don't use that exact same language that was, of a time and of a place, but that idea of one core thing that is driving the episode still holds. And I think for me, that was a little bit of a learning curve. There was a little bit of an attempt. I know when I first came on to be like, all right, we're gonna do movie structure. We're gonna do Save the Cat. We're gonna have a three-part structure, and there's gonna be rising action, and then there's gonna be a climax. And you can sort of fake stuff like that a little bit in shorts. I think there's something to be said for the basic idea of like a person has a problem, they try to solve it wrong, it causes a bigger problem, and then they solve it right. Like that's
yeah,
that's
I just
essentially
wanted
what a
yeah, I just
story
wanted
is. Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to say, is like, let's not throw out the number three, with the bathwater, because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to any story, right? So
Oh,
it
absolutely. Yeah.
maybe, just to clarify, it's more like thinking in terms of that theory, like, okay, what needs to happen at the end of Act One? What needs to happen between here and there? What needs to happen, and all that. It's like not complicating it in that sense. But I remember when we first started kind of working on the scripts for the very first season of these shorts, and we had those late night for me, sessions, and we were going through these scripts and kind of doing a V2, a V3, and so on. We were thinking about them kind of as a 3-act thing, um, but more, I think, more we moved along, it was more of a, hey, there's a setup, there's a complication, something happens, and then there's a payoff in the end. So this kind of 1, 2, 3, you can still think about it. It's a healthy way of thinking about it, but
Yeah.
maybe not trying to like apply the stencil or the pattern of what a fully fledged, 3-act script, should entail in every detail.
Yeah, well, usually, I mean, the nice thing about game is that if you follow game, it sort of lays out in that way anyway, because you have a setup, and then the
Mhm.
person does an unusual thing. People react to that unusual thing. The thing gets more unusual, which they get frustrated by. It causes some sort of crisis, and then it has to get resolved. So it's sort of it moves into that structure anyway. But definitely, when we started working in the short form specifically, um, trying to cram in a movie's worth of content or even a 10-minute episode's worth of content, because I'd been coming off working on the Talking Tom animated series where we had 11-minute episodes, and we did 5 seasons of that, like 200 episodes, maybe 150 episodes, however many episodes, more many. And
Yeah.
so I was very much in that brain space. Um, and so coming into that going, okay, so we'll just do more of those, but now they'll be faster. It doesn't really work because it becomes too frenetic and there's too much going on. And I think the biggest lesson became I even wrote on my whiteboard very dramatically, but then I erased it because I thought it was a little embarrassing. But I wrote like do less. Um,
Yeah.
but it was like there's too much happening in the story. So then it kind of created this little crisis where it was like, are these stories just lesser? Is there just less going on? Are they just less interesting? And I don't think that's true. And I think the way that it made sense was to go back to that idea of game, because game, again, is very simple. Sexy grandma, 2 words. Like it's I get it. I know what that's going to be. And then I can spend 2 minutes with that. I can spend 10 minutes with that, or it could be the pilot for a five season long series. You know, it's the basic fundamental sort of gestalt. I have to use that word in every you know that's going to kind
Done.
of
Okay,
inform.
episode over.
Yeah,
Conversation over. You
cool.
figure out a way
Zeitgeist.
to
Yeah, that was my only real
Zeitgeist.
goal. Um,
What else?
but
What else? What other boxes do we need to check?
Yeah, but it is right. It's the atom. It's the fundamental building block of like what is funny about this, and that can be really long, really short. It should be a simple idea. Um,
Hmm.
you know, another little side thing, but you know, another philosophy that kind of came up a lot was like the audience doesn't owe you their attention. So if your
Exactly.
idea is really obtuse, and even if it's really interesting, even if you're like, if you just listen to me for 15 minutes, you're going to get it. A lot of people are going to be like, well, I don't have 15 minutes, especially if it's something I'm going to show my kids. They certainly don't have
Yeah,
the patience for that. So
and it's
get that really simple idea out and go forward and explore it. And I think going back to that principle, that simple idea, made the transition down to 3 minutes or even to a minute sometimes or shorter much easier. And it made it also more creatively fulfilling, because it's like, oh,
yeah,
this is the same. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this is where like doing digital first or stuff for YouTube, like we have been doing for such a long time, is really good. Um, it's a good workout in that sense. Like for me personally, I remember when I first started going to film festivals and watching some of the stuff that's being kind of selected and really celebrated at film festivals. I was really really angry because my mindset is I want to do narrative work. I want to tell a story, and I consider the time that any audience gives me sacred, right? So like you just said, nobody owes you that time. So that then my job as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is that I need to make that worthwhile. I need to make it clear, relatable, understandable. I need to try and evoke, pull some strings, you know, etc., etc. And I was watching these like very creative, artsy kind of, you know, it's art for art's sake. It has its place, very self-indulgent kind of pieces. But it made me very, very pissed because I didn't see more kind of narrative stuff in these festivals. And YouTube is like, it's like a cold shower in a sense. It has its issues, and it's, the algorithm, the unfathomable, ever changing algorithms and so on. And you can get over analytical about it. And you can go like Kevin, you and I always joke about, when we're talking about retention curves, like are people just sitting there, hovering over
Click
the skip
away.
button. Yeah, like
Yeah.
click away. Yeah, so you can be like over overly obsessed about these things, but it's still good. It's good workout in that sense, just in terms of how you talk to the audience through the stories. It's like, okay, we need to really make it everything clear at the top, right? It's like, what is this about? What is the theme? What are we talking about? What is the setup? What's going on? Is this clear? What do they want to do? The characters. What are they trying to do? How are they failing? And then kind of try and follow that through in an entertaining way until it sort of resolves um, in the end.
Yeah.
So
And with YouTube, with a lot of online stuff, I think the biggest, well, there's a lot of differences, but one big difference that I think goes really nicely with game, and maybe seems like it's pushing against that creative impulse, but I actually think leans into it if you think about it a certain way, is this idea of a lot of the titles of a video, they're very clickbaity, right? They're very hooky. It's very like, this is a crazy thing that's going to happen. And
yeah,
I certainly felt, starting out writing, that my impulse was to try to have like more like book titles, like more artistic, like the whatever, the biggest surprise, or another lousy Monday, or whatever. Um,
yeah,
and you look at the video and it winds up with the title of crazy birthday cake explodes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But creatively, on a purely artistic level, going back to that basic idea that the game logline audiences know your attention, that's perfectly valid because that is what the joke is. And a nice thing, I think, kind of coming up in this comedy world was the joke doesn't have to be a twist. If it is, it's a blackout. It's a whole separate kind of thing. I could talk about blackout jokes, but like in general, you want the audience to know what the joke is going to be. You want them to understand why they're going to laugh at this, and then you want to still surprise them. So if the sketch is called like Tom's birthday cake explodes, they're clicking that video because they want to see the cake explode, and then it's your job to make it explode 3 times in a way that's
Yeah,
surprising. So,
and
it's the
you can
old
still
Looney Tunes thing,
subvert
like,
it. Yeah,
right, the
yeah.
fuse goes all the way down and then it doesn't explode, and he goes, "What?" And he looks at it and he touches it and then it explodes, right? Like, you
Yeah,
start to mess
exactly.
around
There's
with it.
you can still play with it, and I think there's just to draw a little comparison. This is what like good magicians, illusionists, is that an English word?
You could do both.
They do this well, right?
I think an
They do
illusionist
this well.
would be more sexualized in my mind than a magician.
Well, maybe grandma would use that word. Um,
Yes.
so they sometimes they'll set something up that is kind of very obvious, like, okay, I understand how that works, and it's very predictable, and then they will play with it within that same framework. They wouldn't go like completely crazy. Oh, now it's not a bunny, now it's a crocodile or whatever. They'll play
Yeah.
around the bunny in such a way that it still subverts the expectations that you have. And that's kind of the cool part, that there's still so much space for maneuvers even when you have kind of limitations, in lack of a better word. I'm a huge fan of limitations, a huge proponent of limitations for anything in any kind of storytelling medium. But even here, it's like, okay, on your example, crazy birthday cake explosion. Cool. We know what it's about. And then you can play around it exactly in the way like you were describing, Kevin. You can play around it, you can subvert it, you can still have so much fun with it within that framework. Totally.
And the audience
Yeah.
is on board for it. And I think it's just, and again, gotta always say, like, there could be exceptions, but like 9 times out of 10, it's just going to be easier than people. Just imagine the viewer, right? They see the video, they know, they read the title, they go, oh, okay, they click it, or it auto plays, and they see, okay, this is what I'm watching. And they know what to expect. Sometimes the video now, it'll even say like they'll have like the title on screen, like this cake is about to explode, and you're sort of watching it to see where is that going to go. And then I think it means you can, if you have all that just laid out, then you can start to discuss the video on its own merits. You can start to be like, well, did we make it surprising when the cake exploded? Did we just do what we said? We said the cake was going to explode, and then we showed a cake and it exploded. Like, okay, like, could we have made it explode in a more unique and interesting way? And so I think kind of getting away from, again, get that complexity and that sense of like, no, I'm gonna tell a joke that's never been told before. Like, good luck, but probably you won't, and it will probably confuse people. So instead, tell a joke that has been told before, but do it in a new way, or do it in a familiar way, but just with your own unique spin on it. Or do it in a familiar way, in a familiar spin, but just like executed like really nicely and timed super well, and it looks great. And that those are all okay things to do, I think. And again, especially with shorts, when you're dealing with like small bits of attention, I think the worst thing would be for somebody to watch it and just go like, I don't know what I just watched. I'm not sure like what that was.
Yeah.
If it was really, really obvious, but it was clear and it came through, I think that's still like a pretty good result. And I think the audience tends to like it pretty well too, because they get it, they got it. It didn't blow their mind, but not everything is going to blow their mind. Uh,
Yeah.
Definitionally, it can only happen once in a while.
You only have one mind.
Yes, exactly.
You only have it blown so many times. I just want to go back real quick to length.
Mhm.
Just kind of maybe wrap that up a little bit and with a nice bow and like have it be there sort of in the back of people's heads, minds. Um, you're totally right. Like less is better for within this. I think generally speaking, maybe, but within this format specifically, what we've discovered is that when you actually get to start working on the thing, right? And we would Kevin would write the script, or work together on it. I'll, give maybe some thoughts. Other people maybe would chime in, and so on. Script will be done. I would take it over and create a storyboard animatic out of it, and then it'll go to a studio. That's kind of roughly the usual process, right? And then we go through the normal stages of layout, blocking, spline, etc., etc. And what we discovered is that we never, almost never, I don't think, Kevin, remind me if I'm forgetting some exceptional case, but we never struggled to fit or to extend the episode to 3 minutes. We never went like, oh man, this animatic is coming under time. It's like 2.5 minutes, but we need to deliver a 3-minute episode. Man, we should throw more stuff in there. Oh, yikes. The problem is it's always
It's
too long. So it's always,
yeah,
shit. Pardon my language. Crap. We need to cut 45 seconds off this first draft. Something that is a 3-minute episode comes in the first draft of the animatic at like 3:45 or 4:15. Constantine won't let me lie. We've had episodes back in the past that I think we had initial drafts over 5 minutes sometimes, because there's so many things and so many things you also want to explore, and then you know I want to play as well, right? As a director, and the storyboard artist wants to play, and then we have ideas and how, oh, let's do it this way and let's visualize it this way, and so on and so forth. So you're always adding time. On top of that, when you go to 3D, just the nature of a 2D animatic converting to 3D animation, that adds time. Because 2D animatic, even 2D animation is quick, is way quicker than normal um, 3D animation. So you're always adding time. That's why I
yeah,
think over time, Kevin, our scripts got trimmer and trimmer and trimmer and more kind of schematic and bullet pointy, and kind of, okay, paragraph one, or part one, it's this and this and this and this and this happens. Part two, this and this and this and this happens. Like very, very dry and to the point.
yeah. Well, it's that do less thing. It really, because there is an impulse, right? You want to show that you did a lot of work, and so it's like, well, if there's a lot of words, then that looks then I wrote all those words. But to my knowledge, this is like not my personal story, but the only time that I've ever heard of an animated show being too short was there was a Simpsons episode with Sideshow Bob, where they came in like 45 seconds too short, so they added that bit where he keeps stepping on rakes and they keep hitting him in the
Uh-huh.
face, and he grumbles, and he does it like 6 times in a row. And apparently they did that to like pad out the episode. So aside from that one sort of mythological moment, um yeah, they're always too long. And that's, again, that idea of game, and that idea of that simplicity and that one sentence idea. It's like you got to boil it down to something really simple. And if you're thinking about it as, I've got 10 characters and I've got to service all the characters, and this guy's got an arc, and then what do they learn? It's going to be tough. If you just take it down to that one really simple idea, Angela's really tired, but the lights, her window won't close, and so it's too bright in her room. So, what does she
Yeah.
do with that? And you have all the other stuff. You're not abandoning all the other storytelling tools. You still have a character. You have a character with a want. The want is getting frustrated. There's an emotional need for that character. They're going to still attempt to solve the problem. They're going to fail in their resolution. It's going to make the problem worse. It's going to come to a crisis. All that will still happen.
Yeah,
But
and they need to fail
yeah,
in a character appropriate way. Like we keep talking about this on many occasions, but it's like
Yeah.
Angela, for example, should react to the same things in a slightly different way than Tom would react, right? Like, and there's an Angela way of reacting and doing things. If you put them in the same premise that you just described, like, oh, it's too bright and I'm very, very tired, you wouldn't write the exact same script and then just have the characters be interchangeable. So that is to say that even for a 3-minute non-dialogue short that is mostly slapstick and physical, etc., even the way they fall in their butts should be character driven. Should be like, okay, so there's a way to animate this character, a different way to animate this character, and have them act without speaking in the same situation.
Yeah. So it's all there, but it just boils down to that really simple idea. And maybe the one other thing I think with non-dialogue specifically, and it always comes back to do less, make it simpler, is with non-dialogue, you also have to just make sure that the problem that the character's facing is very physical and obvious. So like, I am tired and it is bright. I am hungry, but the cake is behind a locked door. Or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And again, if you have dialogue there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you were gonna.
No. Finish your thought. I just wanted to say this is also like something that I wanted to touch on next. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool. So I think it's related, right? It's again that idea of like, so boiling things down to their essence and a really simple idea, and just, okay, we have something that's going to be very easy to grasp very quickly, and then we're going to kind of explore that in a way that is less obvious. We're going to explore it in a way that becomes more unique. I think,
Yeah.
like, if you have dialogue, maybe if you have a slightly older audience too, there are certain tropes, like everybody knows the trope of like, I'm supposed to be in two places at the same time, right? So it's like, oh, you got a character and they're supposed to meet a friend for coffee, but they've got an important work meeting and they're probably, they're running around between the two. I personally always have a lot of trouble with that story. I feel like it's actually a lot harder to do than to pull off than people think. But just to use that as an example, I never say never, but I don't think that can really be done in non-dialogue because it's too esoteric. Like, what the character needs is too hard to show in that 3-second opening. It's too hard to say, well, you see, it's really important to this character that they preserve this relationship, but also they have this like career goal and they really need to do that. And so how are they going to balance it? Like,
it needs to be really, really visual. Like, unless it's some version of Mrs. Doubtfire, the scene in the end where he's having the business meeting, like literally exactly what you described, having a business meeting with the TV exec and then dinner with the family, and he needs to get like in and out of his makeup.
Well, but that works because you have the first 2/3 of Mrs. Doubtfire to set all that stuff up. And that's so yeah. So with the short, I think it's just it's keeping the needs sort of primal, keeping it just somebody's painting a room and they've painted themselves in a corner and now they have to try to get out of the corner without messing up all the paint or whatever it is. Like, it just something very easy to see.
Yeah, I wanted to say like clarity and simplicity, even on an emotional level. And I'll give that example. We talked about this when we were kind of sort of prepping for this and just like planning a little bit. Sometimes you write certain things and especially when you have more characters to service, and there's certain situations where you don't want a certain character, well, none of your main characters, unless they're specifically a villain, you don't want them to come off as being too mean, right? Because again, it's also imitable behavior. You don't want your target audience to look at that and go, aha, okay, so it's cool to be like that. So sometimes that comes at the cost of like overcomplicating the beat emotionally, because for the story to work, for the setup to work, that character, they actually need to do what they set out to do. but then you go, but they have like a little moment of where something happens, or maybe they're thinking like, is it worth it, or whatever it is. So a very simple example, like recently I was looking at an animatic, and there's a thing where we have one of our characters kind of scaring the other guys, right? And eventually, obviously, she hoist by her own petard and so on. But there is like a half beat in there which sort of seeped through, script and animatic, and we're looking at already animation passes. And there was a beat where the character was surprised that the thing she's doing is working, right? So she was going like, "Arr!" And then the character she's doing that too would get scared and run away, and she would have like this half beat of like, yeah, that worked, right? And if you're able to say that, oh, that actually worked, then that would make sense. But if you don't have that piece of dialogue, then it looks like, and it looks like she's also scared by her own thing. And then she's, okay, now I'm playful and mean again. Let's go back to it. And when that happens 2 or 3 times in a row, all it is confusing. So it doesn't read as, she's surprised that her setup is actually working. And she's progressively getting more and more into this thing and kind of getting caught up in it, because she's not initially a mean person or character, right? Because she was surprised that it worked, right? So we need to keep that. That's important, to not make her come off as too mean. But with no dialogue, and even in animatic, like I didn't flag this. In animatic, it looked like, oh, that's cool. Because again, everything is so quick. When it's slowed down in 3D animation, like, why is she surprised? Is she also scared by her own actions? Like, what is going on? And I asked the guys to cut that beat or reduce it, and because it just didn't translate, right? So I think, again, going back to that idea of clarity and emotional simplicity as well, so that you can really track easily what's going on. So there's a lot of human emotions, especially if you're talking about an animated character that has a huge head and tiny limbs, that are easy to confuse, with no dialogue, right? So like being scared, slightly scared, or surprised can be very, very similar, like in this particular example. So I tried, from a visual standpoint, I try to look at it always from the lens of like, is this clear, and can this be misinterpreted? If it can be misinterpreted, if you look at a beat and you go, oh, this could also be misinterpreted as if like she's scared or surprised or something else, then you need to really break it down and kind of rebuild it in a way where it leaves very little room for doubt. Like really
and
clear.
it's, if you think about the storytelling impulse, like if it was a novel, you might say she was surprised that her costume was so
Yes.
successful, and you kind of
Yeah.
put yourself in that. If you're writing and if you're directing, like you kind of are writing that novel in your mind, and you're trying to live as the character and think about that. So you're thinking about this character more than, even if the character was real, they would think about their own situation, and so you'd be like, oh, there would be an element of surprise. And that's there's an honesty to that, but yeah, ultimately it's that do less principle, right? It's that make it really simple. She wanted to be scary, now she's scary, so she's happy because she's fulfilled that
Mm-hmm.
desire. Now she's really scary, now she's too scary, we're heightening, and then we have the crisis, and then whatever happens next. um I guess it's like also maybe the flip side of that, of do less, but then what you do it really well, or believe in what you do. If you can only show a few things, if you have an episode where a character is trying to be scary, there are so many ways to explore that. A kid that wants to be scary, but they're a chicken. A kid that wants to be scary and all their friends are chicken. A kid that wants to be scary, but there's real ghosts outside, and now they're not as scary anymore. There's a million
Yeah.
ways, and that's what's kind of brilliant about it. The more you think about it, like even Sexy Grandma, you could give that idea to like 10 different people. They'd have 10 very different takes on it. Some of them would be good and some of them would be less good. But basically, like what you want to I think what you want to find is like you want to find a way that feels really honest that you can stand behind. So it's like if we're only going to do this joke, if we're going to explore the concept of being scary, um, knowing that there's an endless amount of ways that you can approach that, and that this little short is not going to be the final word on it. It's going to be one joke or one little story or
Story.
one video or however you see it. Um, but it's going to be a clear joke, and it's going to be, this is what we're saying. We are saying that this is about a character that wanted to be scary. They got their wish and they were too scary and they had to pull it back. Um, and then, you know, going back to that initial thing. And then if you say, well, I don't want to do that joke, I would rather it be about a character that wanted to be scary, and no matter what they did, they weren't scary. Cool. That's a different joke. And then you can talk about it at that level, and you'd be like, well, what would be better? But you can't do both. You can't do, okay, well, in the first half it's one, and in the second half it's the other, and then in the tag is a different joke, because then you get back to that everything's crazy idea from the beginning, and everything kind of competes. And so
This actually kind of neatly brings me to another point that I wanted to make, is just to give people maybe who haven't been through kind of this conveyor belt of creating this much volume of shorts as you and I have. Don't forget that this is episodic stuff. You're not making a magnum opus feature film, you know, that's going to be, that you're hoping to be remembered for. You know, it's short form, it's episodic stuff, especially if it's a digital first thing. Nobody ever knows which episode is actually going to be successful in numbers. If specifically as an example, if we're talking about YouTube, nobody can look at 2 episodes and predict with any degree of probability that okay, this one is really going to be successful and this one isn't. Sometimes some episodes that we feel are maybe like a little bit like they do really, really great numbers. So you never really know what's going to work, and for that you almost have to train within yourself a little bit of that flexibility. Definitely working for as high quality of a product as you can, but be flexible enough to kind of go, hey, we haven't really ended an episode like this before, for example. This is also a valid thing to do. Maybe it's a little bit outside of the format, maybe it's a little bit outside of how we usually do things, but let's try it, let's see. Or sometimes we do this, right? Or like a whole script that is a little bit different. So I wouldn't put now, having had that vast experience, I wouldn't put that much pressure on myself in terms of it has to be a certain thing, and it has to be within certain parameters, even in production stages, not just the story structure or so on. So it's good to keep a level of kind of looseness and be open to failure, I guess, but in a good way, where let's try something different. We know that thing worked for that particular episode. Sometimes you can kind of clone things, like they sort of work. There's evergreen things that always work, like Halloween episodes. But in terms of story structure or whatever, it's hard to replicate. Looking at a thing that is very, very successful and go, okay, let's do more of that. You can only make educated guesses. So it's good to keep like a looseness, because you're covering more bases, I think, that way.
A structural looseness for sure. And yeah, basically saying like, well, let's try this one simple joke that we've never tried before. It's definitely a benefit if you're doing a lot of them, because you can say we're gonna experiment a little. But I would just say, if you're in a position where you're only making one, maybe that makes it a little bit more harrowing when you're trying to get it down, boil it down to that one sentence. But you still have to do it, because you still can't, even if you're only making one 90-second short, it can't introduce 17 characters. It can't world build a whole magic system. You can't cram a movie into it. If you try, it's either going to be a sizzle reel or it's just going to be a mess. So what can you do in that time is you can calmly and confidently do one thing. And if that one thing is really well aligned with your vision, then hopefully people like it, and then you can do another thing that is also aligned, and then eventually you build that universe. But do less, but do it well.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And one more thing, which is my last thought for today, last little topic, is also thinking about relatability. So, and relatability for me is a vast term. This is one of those things that I kind of keep repeating in reviews and mentoring people and talking to people. It's part of that sort of like a holy trinity for me. It's like focus, clarity, relatability, right? And relatability is a vast term because it's relatability in terms of, it could be interpreted as relatability in terms of relatable situations for the target audience. Does the target audience understand this setup? Has the target audience ever been behind on their mortgage? No, they're 6. Great. Let's move on to something else. That's a way. Another way is emotional related. Like, do I understand this? Do I understand this human interaction? Do I understand this emotional state that this particular character? Do I understand that, I don't know, feeling of disappointment? Do I understand that feeling of being impatient, you're really wanting something to happen, being very excited about something? Like, do I get it? And again, if you manifest it in visuals in a very clear way, even if the setup maybe a member of the target audience could look at that and go, okay, I've never been in that particular situation, but I've been in other situations where I felt exactly like this. So you can think about that in so many different ways. And I think it's also a good kind of foolproof, fail-safe way of looking at different beats or different parts of the story, setups specifically, right? Premises. Again, going back to that emotional clarity, simplicity, tracking, and so on. And to me, it's like the highest level you can get, where you get so good at it that people, when they look at your stories, they go, oh, I get it. I understand. This is relatable. Although I haven't been in that situation personally, but I get it. I understand.
Yeah, and I think if you boil it down to its essence, most people can relate to if you get it down to something that is a basic joke, a really simple idea. The hungry person can't get the food, the tired person can't get to sleep, the annoying person is getting rewarded, the villain is getting beat up, whatever. People, I think people of any audience can generally relate to those essential concepts. And then what you have is just you have a verbiage issue where you just have to figure out the right way to phrase it. Like sexy grandma is probably not going to play for 5-year-olds, but kissy
Yeah.
grandma might. And
Yeah.
so okay, so it's the same idea, right? It's grandma, but she's too affectionate and she's kissing, and the kid is and running away, and it's it's the same basic joke. Grandma's being inappropriate, making people uncomfortable, but you tone it down and you adjust it a little bit. But the essential reason that's funny for people, whatever it is, the sort of core thing that people are reacting to, um, is the same. So I always feel like, when they say kids are smart, like they're smart about some things. But they're smart about those basic emotional ideas. It's the
Yeah.
details that are different for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of emotional intelligence, appropriate for that age, sometimes we don't give kids enough credit. um, in the sense that they'll understand the feeling, they'll because I think up to a certain age, at least, until, I don't know, it gets beaten out of them, but kids are way more naturally more empathic normally. and we kind of lose that ability, I think, as we age. So it's easier for them to put themselves in other kids or other people's shoes. So yeah, cool. Is there anything else we need to touch on? That's all my bullet points.
Well, in the principle of keep it simple, I think I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this was a good conversation.
it was great. It was really, really fun. And also the correct length, just about an hour minus the small talk. So that's good. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you very
and
much.
listening in. I hope this was useful and
Thank you.
to the point. I will also post this in the group so you can come back to this or share it with other community members if you wish.
Sure.
All right, cool.
Thank
Have
you.
a good time of the day wherever you are.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Kevin,
Thank you,
guys.
thanks for doing this.
Bye-bye.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for setting all this up.
All right.
All right.
Cool. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.